we're chatting with Mr. Gregory Bayne online today. He's the filmmaker from Person of Interest, from JENS PULVER Driven, and now his latest project, Bloodsworth, he's in production on. And Gregory, we want to thank you. You know, we know you have a lot going on. We want to thank you for chatting with us, and really, you know, we just released Goodbye Promise online today. It's a very ambitious endeavor. So we're just going to chat with you about it. We're going to chat with you about maybe some things you've learned, because you've also done some unconventional, you know, like you know, creating your own path in terms of distribution. You know, following your own, you know, just doing it your own way and finding success that way. And you've also done things, you know, more traditionally as well. So you've kind of, and so I don't know. We just want to hear from you a little bit, pick your brain, and learn from someone we really respect.
Oh, it's kind of you. Congrats, by the way. That's really cool. I love what you're doing. I mean, it looks, you'd been sort of leading up to it, and I really had no idea. I kind of checking in, but I didn't know what you were going to pull out of the hat. And I was surprised, actually, and I thought, oh, that's actually a very cool and interesting, noteworthy new approach. So,
yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, we hope so. You know, it just, this is something that's literally been on our mind for, you know, since last August, September, is, you know, I mean, obviously we thought we'd finish Goodbye Promise much sooner than this, and it's just it's been one of these films that just sort of dragged, you know, it's dragged out. It's just like everything that could, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, you know, in the post-production process. So it's, you know, we always thought like, okay, we're gonna release it now, and it just, that day never came, and so I guess it's given us more time to think about, you know, doing something like this, and even with all the thinking that goes into it, at the end of the day, you still just have to put it out there and just roll up the sleeves and put in the hustle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing, you never know exactly how it's going to go, obviously. And it can be, you know, I mean, it may surprise you. It may surprise you in great ways, or it may surprise you in disappointing ways, you know, but it's all sort of, yeah. I mean, for me, over the last couple of years, the one thing that I just continually hammer home in my head and my work is that it really just is about getting it out and being as prolific as possible. And sometimes it's easier than others. Yeah, I've been working on Bloodsworth. Actually, I've been working on Bloodsworth now since, I mean, it's been over a year. I'm almost a year and a half probably of sort of between developing and shooting and developing, and it's been, you know, I feel like I'm still at the very beginning of making the movie, and it's very, you know, frustrating in that way. But, you know, but it's been nice too that there's some things that have gotten out there. But I realized that the key is just like to keep getting work out there and to find new and interesting ways to do that. And I think that you guys have done that with this. You know, I mean, like I said, I was sort of surprised. I had never thought of trying that, and I think that, I mean, the great thing is, the other thing that I realized is that it's hard to, like if somebody does something really cool and is really successful at it, you can sort of glean some things from it, but you can't really repeat it. It's very difficult to do that, because it's like the film itself. It takes all these sort of things, you know, to come together, whether they're people and timing and, you know, whatever the universe brings together to make that thing happen and then actually be something. And it's that way with the distribution, you know. Yeah. I mean, like Person of Interest, we put it out on Vodo for torrents for free, and I think, you know, I mean, according to the ticker on Vodo, it's like been downloaded, I think, just shy of 100,000 times. But I think, I don't know that that's an accurate ticker. But then one of the people that downloaded it put it up on YouTube, and, you know, it's been watched almost 500,000 times on YouTube, and there's quite a discussion going. But it's also a thing where, I mean, luckily the guy didn't put ads on it, so he's not making money on it. He just liked it, put it up. So I was happy about that. But, you know, I had thought about putting it out that way and then maybe trying to make money off of ads or something. But it's actually more interesting because it's just out there and people are watching it. And there's a lot of discussion, I mean, especially for that movie, because it's about, you know, Iraq war vet. There's actually a lot of war vets dealing with PTSD that are really seeming to connect with the film. But again, it's just out there and it has nothing to do with me, really. It's just out And then Driven obviously was a little more conventional, and it's been good. It's been fruitful. I mean, it's nice. Like I have a film that's making money. I'm not making, you know, like ridiculous. I'm not suddenly independently wealthy or anything, but you know, I mean, it's pretty nice. I get a check every quarter, and I cut that in half. I give half of it to Jens, and I take my half, and you know, I've been able to, you know, it's actually been nice to know, like, oh, well, at the end of that month, there will be a check. I have no idea what it will be for. I mean, some of the amounts I know what they'll be. Like, there's licensing agreements with like Netflix, which is a flat fee. Um, but then there's, you know, how many people are going to be downloading and watching on iTunes or on Amazon or now it's on Hulu. There's ad share, you know, and that was, we just got some of that, and it wasn't not remarkable at this point, but I'm not completely, it makes me want to investigate, like, how does that work and how do I get more people watching it there? Does that, you know, what percentage of the ads, what percentage of Hulu Plus, like those things. So I'm trying to understand all that. The nice thing is I've seen that it's actually been, even though it's been released on Netflix, it's been released and been, you know, watched a lot there. I have noticed that the revenue in terms of people buying it online from like iTunes is not really ticked down. It's been pretty consistent, so that's been nice. But anyway, now I'm just rambling on. Do you have any questions for me? Or
Well, yeah. Do you want to start with any questions, Karen?
Go for it.
Okay. All right.
I'm taking it all in.
no, go ahead. Go
Real quick,
ahead.
but no, I like what you say too about, you know, people who sort of are the first ones to establish a way of doing something. It makes me think of Four-Eyed Monsters, you know, and how they were very successful with their film and just, you know, just incorporating the video responses from the viewers and things like that. And then it's a little hard to duplicate because it's already been done, and it was such a you know, sort of a rare gem of a project.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, there's all those things, but it's great because that also, like what they did in that project, I think opened up people's mind to the experiential things that you could create around your project. You know, I mean, I know like a lot of people talk about transmedia and all that, and I think there's a level of that, but it's more about just taking, you know, like not leaving any meat on the bone in terms of your footage and stuff, and really creating an event. And they created a really interesting thing. And then again, like right at the beginning of video podcasting and all that sort of stuff. So again, it was all those strange factors that came together in perfect timing, and you know, there's a lot to glean from it. But even, you know, with, you know, like Aaron Crumley, it's not something that's sustainable. He can't do that again. It's you have to then, what it really comes back to, and I think that a lot of people forget this, is that you have to have a high quality of work. You have to have a good craft. And as you know, I've been saying, I've talked to a couple, you know, like panels and that sort of thing in the recent year, and my MO is that, you know, that sort of transaction, you know, we always think, well, we make a movie and then somebody pays us to watch it, and that's how we make our money. That's the transaction. And I think that is, well, it's not accurate anymore, one. And our way, you know, our monetary gain from our work is not a straight line anymore. We may do this, Driven may make a little bit of money, it may lead to something else, or it may not. But I have that out there, and but then somebody saw that. This actually happened to me. So somebody saw Driven. I didn't end up doing it just because of it was a Southern California project, but somebody saw Driven on Netflix, and then I'm easily accessible on the web, so they contacted me to direct a documentary for them. Unfortunately, it was timing and me being in Idaho at the time, and it was being shot in Southern California. It didn't really work out, but you know, it's an example of like, well, it's not a straight line, but oh, there's people and things out there happening that you don't really realize. And one way or another, if you're prolific enough and your craft is good enough and your work is continually solid, you know, people do notice and start to pay attention. And you know, maybe it may not be a film, it may not be a documentary, it may be, you know, I mean, like Aaron Crumley, since we're on him, he did that thing with Google Nexus, you know. I'm sure he got paid a pretty penny to do some work with Google. You got to do something in his style and make something cool, and get paid, and that's how it works now. It's all, the tentacles are wide and out there, and you just have to, be willing, I think, to not say. I think it's hard in this day and age, people that I think, that are in our level of the industry, which, I think is it used to be like the real low rung of indie, but all the scaffolding above us has sort of fallen down, and I think everybody's like jarred because they're looking around going, "Oh, I'm on the same level with you people," but I think it's the way it is, and we're all sort of on the same field, and so the people that are doing great work and being prolific and being accessible and being nice, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to find a lot of different gigs. I mean, if you look around at most people that are doing anything like I'm doing, they may be doing a little more successfully, granted, but they're directing episodes of TV shows, or doing short commercial spots, or doing this or doing that, to help pay the bills along the way. I think that's just the way it's becoming. Every once in a while, you might have a nice little hit and be able to generate some income from your actual work that's yours, that you own, which is great. And the other part of it too now is that you can, like I own with Jason, I own Person of Interest, and I own with JENS, I own Driven, with Bloodsworth, I own that with Kirk. So there's very limited, I mean, between me and the money, there's nothing, there's no middleman, there's nobody, and that's figuring out the financing. Either you're doing it for a little bit of money that you can just put on your own, or you're doing it for some money like I raised for Driven, or like I'm raising for Bloodsworth, which is, it's also been Kickstarter, but the majority of it will probably end up being like grants and foundational money. Trying to limit the upfront cost, or limit any cost that's going to have to go back to investors, is also key, I've found, in this whole distribution matrix of making it work and making it make money, and giving the opportunity, like you have, to do things that people aren't doing, and being able to experience. Because no matter, like, if the thing goes gangbusters and you make a bunch of money this month, that'll be great, and everyone will applaud you and be very happy for you. If it does moderately well, and you gain a whole new, fresh audience because you've basically said, "Hey, here's our work, watch it, please," and and literally we're asking for almost a favor, like pitch in $1, pitch in $2, that nobody is going to go, "Oh, those assholes," I mean, they're going to be very. I think that you give yourself the opportunity, like you already have, because you've already been very active in the community, obviously, and you've given such great, voice to the independent community, but also, introduced a lot. You've got some great interviews, and I think you've got a lot of educational stuff going on that people really appreciate. So you have all these things bundled together. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how the next 30 days go for you. I hope for good things.
We're curious.
Yeah, no, this is so cool to sit down and connect with you here, Gregory. And just sort of connect with you off the cuff. I want to come back to Person of Interest and Vodo, because that was you sort of experimenting with getting that work out there, and it's really interesting to hear you say that it's gotten maybe 100,000 downloads, but then someone took it and offshoot it to YouTube, where then now it's been seen 500,000 times, and I know like when it started blowing up on YouTube, I know we emailed you or contacted you and said, "Hey, have you notified that guy to just like put a link to the DVD?" I mean, did he ever do that? Did he ever like link?
Yeah, he did. He put the link to the website on there. I emailed him a while back, and yeah, it's interesting how that's gone, because I didn't. I looked at one point. I saw it go up at the initial, because I always get like Google alerts, and I saw that. I was like, oh. And so I emailed the guy. I said, "Hey, I'm glad you liked the movie. Thanks for uploading it." It was there free to share, so it's not like I didn't go, "I can't believe you did that." And I remember I saw it like around like December or something, and I saw that it had like 38,000 views, and I was like, "Wow, it's pretty good." And then I think 4 months later, it was 220,000. I was like, "What the hell happened here?" And there's all this discussion. I mean, some of it was granted like YouTube discussion, which is that I don't completely understand. Yeah. It's funny though, because there's a part of me that's really glad that somebody else uploaded it, because then I don't have to have that commentary rolling sort of on my feed.
Yeah.
Because I always feel compelled that I have to respond to people, and there's a lot I don't want to respond to there. But there's been some pretty incredible comments as well. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's really, talking about one thing leading to another is that, like, that whole situation with person of interest. I was talking to my friend Cory who did American Astronaut and Stingray Sam, and I've loved his work. We met in 2010 when we were talking at the same conference in New York, and I just been a huge fan. So I was like, I mean, for me, I get starstruck about people like him because I was like, oh, you make such amazing, cool stuff. I wish I, like, had an ounce of your talent. So amazing. So anyway, we became fast friends. And he'd been going through, like, he had made his film sort of more conventionally, sort of, and had just come off doing this. He has a film out now called Crazy Thief, which is really gritty, low budget. He and a friend went and shot it with his kids. It's fantastic. I absolutely love the movie. But back this March, we were talking on the phone, and he's like, don't you know a bunch about that crowdsourcing stuff? Yeah, I mean, I guess, It's like, well, it's like, I have this idea, and I want to, I'm trying to figure out how to do this thing, and so we've started this group called Captain Ahab's Motorcycle Club, which is this sort of completely embracing the idea of the internet and all that it brings. So I feel like up till now, especially in the film and definitely in music and other things, artists have not been able to, and in some ways rightfully so, get over that threshold where they can be like, free sharing of all of this is a good thing. And getting back to just sheer creativity is a great thing. And we looked at some different things like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's, hitrecord.com, where he does like this, there's a bunch of people and they may use tidbits of things, and then if they make money, they give you money. And we're like, well, we're not that guy, and we can't create anything like that. We just want to create like this sort of global experience where we make something cool. So having gone through person of interest and these ideas of sharing, how it can actually be beneficial, maybe you don't know when you're going to reap the rewards from any of this, which is, I think, really hard for a lot of people. And in all fairness, like, it wasn't a movie that cost me $500,000, so I don't have a bunch of money. I had to pay somebody back, which if I did, then maybe some of the things I've done would be irresponsible, but under the it's a $500 movie, so it's not. But so this idea of being able to start to really embrace the free-flowing nature of the internet, that we can create things, we can figure out how, maybe not to monetize the product. Like the thing with Captain Ahab is that, Cory like uploaded a bunch of music tracks of his own, and we sent them out like, please download them, you can perform them, you can remix them, you just can't sell them, and please share them back with us so we can share with the greater community. We're doing the same thing with art, and with eventually what we're going to do is make a film, which Cory and I will raise the financing for the portion that we're doing, which will be the spine of this movie. And then we're hoping, I mean, we got chapters in Brazil, and the UK, and Ireland, and Iceland, and Russia. I mean, all these people are starting to get into this big idea, like, oh, we'll create something together. And the whole idea is that, individually people will be, raising their own little bits of money to make their pieces of the project. And then Cory will direct this film from this wide tapestry that we have, and I'll produce it. And then we'll release it for free. And that's the process. And it's not necessarily about financial gain. And it's definitely adhering to the idea, like, well, our transaction for this, for any of the artist's financial benefit, is not going to be a direct, I make this, people pay me for it. It's going to be, we all embark on a shared endeavor. We make something really cool. We put it out for the world to experience, and whatever benefit we glean from whoever sees in the world, great. So anyway, so that's a long spiel on.
I mean, how great is that? I mean, this is a guy, because we know that you've really respected Cory And I mean, this must be a dream come true. Like, you know, this project coming together.
Yeah,
you're working with them.
It's super it's incredibly cool, you know, and also too to be involved in, you know, I mean this, and then we're talking about doing some, you know, more traditional projects where, you know, I'll hopefully help them produce, you know, the next feature beyond this one, and yeah, it's great. So, you know, it's to me it really starts to become more, and I think that you guys are definitely evidence of this. It's about, you know, they say be the change you want to see in the world. It's like, go make the art you want to see in the world. You know, art is my solace. It makes me happy. I am seeing great art, being part of great art being created. You know, stuff that I'm into. Hopefully, that's the thing. So yeah, I mean, definitely being able to work with Cory, who's a great person and a good friend now, and I feel like we're doing something that we both genuinely want to do from a truly, like, we want to figure out how to make something like this work successfully. There's so many pitfalls to it inherently with shared collaboration, and we're trying to take out as many of those as we can. We know it's going to be a big endeavor eventually, but we knew the first one was the money, so we're like, we have to take that out of the equation right out of the gate. The money has got to be like, there is no money. If it makes any or generates any money, we give it to charity. That's how we roll. So
I like what you said earlier too. You touched on sometimes it's not the project that you think is going to be sort of the big hit or make all the money. It's people seeing that and then something other coming out of that. And that's something that, I don't know if you ever read or listen to Hugh MacLeod. He wrote Ignore Everybody, 39 Keys to Creativity. And so
I've heard of that, but I don't think I've read it.
Yeah, it's
not
really
about
great.
reading books on creativity.
Well, I have it on audio and I listen to it while I'm driving, and so yeah, he just talks about a lot of times it's not the thing that you think is going to launch your career. It's something ancillary, something that's a side thing that comes out of it. It almost reminds me of Anthony Bourdain of Kitchen Confidential, and if I heard him correctly, I think he makes most of his living speaking. And it wasn't actually from the book or the show, but I could be mistaken on that. But yeah, you just don't know what someone's going to see out there and how it could take a new route for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where it comes, you know, you got to be open. I mean, will perhaps your career lead you to that point where you take over the Batman series from Christopher Nolan? Maybe. Probably not. But, you know, just because, you know, I'm obviously there's a studio system and that trajectory, which I don't understand at all. I mean, I live in Idaho most of the time, and then I'm in New York, so I'm like far away from Los Angeles, and I really don't understand any of that, and I don't claim to, or have any sort of, you know, allusions to this, you know, that I have it keyed in on how any of that would work. But I do know that just generally that, you know, if you want to be a creative person and you want to work and make a living from that, you can do that. It just requires a lot of hustle, and it requires being open to doing a lot of things that you think maybe that you wouldn't have done. And, you know, not in a bad way. I'm not doing porn, so there's that. You know.
You know, what was I love hearing you say that, you know, because, you know, honestly, I mean, you know, Karen and I, we've spoken to so many filmmakers who've had sort of these horrific experiences with distributors. You know, they take their work and it can be a treacherous thing, you know, because you're getting into business. I mean, you know, with people you don't necessarily know that well. They're taking over your film and you're entrusting them. That they're going to get it out on the right platforms, get it out, you know, help you get it out to the audience, market it, and then at the end of the day, return money, you know, and we often hear that, you know, more and more there's no money up front for filmmakers, and then at the same time you hear there's not really money in the back end, but you're saying checks are coming in every month. So can you talk a little bit about that, and can you talk about how long did it take to get to the point where all of a sudden checks were coming in?
So Gravitas Ventures is who is releasing Driven, and you know, the deal I have with them and I don't know how they structure all the deals, but I think they're all probably pretty close to this. And so it's a pretty fair deal. Is that I paid for the delivery, which was for VOD, which was about $5,400 for doing all the like HD mastering and everything you have to do, closed captioning, that sort of thing. And then there was another around $3,000 for insurance. So, $8,400. Which is a big chunk of money, but also like the film was, basically they have a deal with Warner Brothers where Warner Brothers Digital put it out through their VOD networks. So you have what they described to me initially was we can get it out to about 12 to 15 million households on our own through our own video on demand, like cable VOD, and then they do also like iTunes and all the internet platforms. But then there's Warner Brothers who can expand that to about 100 million homes. And then luckily we'd gotten to that track, which was very cool. And so basically the way the billing works is that it released in July, and I didn't see a check until January. Because, basically you have, like the internet distributors, so they're on a monthly sort of thing. So say somebody rents it in July, they're billed there, and then they pay in August. Well, but then Warner Brothers has like 120 days to pay Gravitas, who then pays me. With VOD, it works, so somebody rents it in July, they pay it on their August bill, and then in August, the VOD cable company pays Warner Brothers in September, and then there's the turnaround, and then I get paid. So it was this long. It was about 9 months before seeing actual return. But then I was actually surprised. I actually wasn't expecting to see anything until March of this year, but I got a check at the end of January. I was like, I mean, it wasn't earth shattering, but it was in the thousands, and I was like, oh, great. And then the next one went up. The next one went a little bit down, but not so ridiculous. They kind of gave me a range of where it might fall in the first year, and it's pretty on track for that. It's on the lower end, but again, I'm not so there's a lot of films out there. There's a lot of competition and driven. I mean, luckily JENS has a lot of name notoriety, and I think it's kept it going. That plus, I think the film's actually quite good, which helps to keep it going.
It is. It really is.
Thank you. But so it has stayed. Like I said, the VOD was for a window. So it basically released July 1st-ish. I can't remember the exact date, but it released in July, and then for 6 months. So basically July through December, it was on only on paid platforms. And the cable video on demand stuff, they all cycle through. So there's a lot of cable networks it's probably not on anymore. It's mostly online now. But like I said, the internet stuff seems to be fairly consistent. Again, it's not earth-shattering numbers, but frankly, I feel like any independent film, any numbers that are profit, and at this point it's pure profit. The film's paid off. I don't know anybody. It's all taken care of, and now basically the checks come in, and like I said, we keep a little back, and then we split it and go on our merry way. And it's great because the JENS is getting direct benefit from the film that bears his name, and it's a good scenario. And there are other things that we probably will continue to do with in the future. The great thing is too is I've only licensed to them, so they have just video on demand for 3 years, and at the end of that we can renegotiate, or all the rights go back to me, or however we do that. And it's also a good thing because you never know, like in 2014, where are things going to be in terms of video on demand. Hopefully they'll still be on an uptick, but there may be a situation where people like us can deal more directly with some of these platforms. I don't know.
I mean, was that something you pushed for? Did you push for the license and retaining ownership?
That's kind of their blanket deal. Like they have to. I mean, the problem is that most of these companies, like they understand. I think that when they're looking at films like this, there's a short window of profit, really. I mean, I know we all talk about the long tail, and I think the long tail eventually comes from we own it. Like I do all the DVD stuff. I've looked into a bit of DVD distribution. I think there's the potential that maybe we could do, like if I could get into Walmart, that would be great. But the problem is now with just traditional distributors, because there's not a lot of money in DVD, they're coupling it with VOD. And I went with Gravitas because I felt like they had a really good deal. Our split with them is I get 75%, they get 25% for their efforts. But they don't do DVD. Some of the companies, like I said, that do DVD, couple of VOD. So because I already have my VOD deal in place and can't offer them that, that's been a little bit of a problem. But we sell, again, not at earth-shattering numbers, but we have sold DVDs every single month since November of 2010. So except for the time I took it off. This is why I'm like, it doesn't really matter what you do. Like I had the DVD out. I had digital downloads because I was using Topspin. I had everything going. November 2010. Had it going. January is when I met Gravitas people. By March we had a deal, and they're basically like, "Well, you haven't had an official release yet." I'm like, well, nothing official, no. And so they're like, "Okay, well, you have to take the DVD off sale. Like you can't the VOD release date, the DVD release date have to coincide." So I basically took it off the market from March until July. But again, every other single month, except for that period of time where it just simply wasn't available, we've sold DVDs. I just sold one today. So, and it's not, like I said, it's not astronomical money, but we sell them for $16.99 plus shipping and handling. There's a little bit of fees that go with Amazon or Topspin, whichever one they come through. But in terms of like if I had a DVD distributor, my margin might be like I get $1 or $2 for DVD. And this way, I mean, JENS and I are splitting like $15, which is a much higher margin. So it's a lot more work. I make a lot of treks down to the post office, but it's great for losing weight. So.
I mean, do you notice it makes any difference? Do the people buying the DVDs and supporting direct? I mean, do you find that makes a difference? Like if they know that the money's going back to you and the money's going back to JENS?
I honestly, at this point in time, I don't think so. Like when we were doing most of the fundraising that way, I mean, that's how I funded the movie. It was basically the Kickstarter and then pre-selling DVDs. I think then it did. It was, and there was also that initial edition was a much more sort of special edition DVD, and then we had the fan edition DVD that would then sold out of afterwards, and then we're on the third run of 1,000 that we had done. So we got rid of quite a few DVDs, and I think now it's just it's actually that nice place, so this people before where it's just a movie, it's just a movie out there that people go, oh, I want to watch that movie, or I want to own that movie. So it doesn't really have anything to, I think probably at this point it has a lot more to do with JENS, and wanting to see a movie about him than anything else. So, but I like that because it's joined the ranks of movies. It's just a movie. You can get it, watch it.
Anything here?
I'm wondering what's the short window? You said there's sort of this very short period of time to sort of get those views, and then after that it kind of lingers.
Oh, well, I guess my point with that is that it probably doesn't make a lot of economic sense unless the movie does incredibly well for these companies, to try and buy out your rights. I mean, one, you're not going to sell your rights for $0 because that doesn't make a lot of sense. So a 3-year window for them to have exclusive license on certain aspects of your property makes sense because there's, like I said, that first 6 months is probably the initial. You know, I know for the first 6 months there was a lot of talk and everything generated. Obviously, generated most of its video on demand revenue during that period of time. We're going overseas here eventually, so I'm hoping that it'll have another sort of uptick with that. But it ebbs and flows. But I'm just saying that my point was more towards, I think distributors like Gravitas and some of the others in the VOD market are realizing they have to be a little more nimble. So having them personally having a catalog of films that they own is not exactly like the studios, that's a big deal. But for these distributors that are basically providing video on demand service deals for you, it doesn't behoove them to own the property. It behooves them to have exclusive rights to it for a certain period of time so they can make the money, most likely the most money that will be generated for the film in that platform for that period of time, and have that, as opposed to trying to create a library of films. I think that that's the thing. The library of films now is going to come down to the individual artist. I think it's like I would like to own my library of films. So then, someday when people are looking for this exclusive thing, and I'm the one that has it, and they have to come to me, sort of situation. But yeah, so I mean, I think with any film, it's like box office in general. You see it. It's like the first 3 weeks, like it just goes. Depending on the movie, if it sucks, it's the first 2 days, and then it goes down. But it's just that there is sort of this window where you're going to make probably the bulk of your income. Not to say that there isn't a long tail that you can't ride out. I think there is. And if you can continue the success of the movie. And luckily with Driven, I feel like it's a film that really resonates with people beyond, like I was very specific in making a film, it was about the fight world, but not in the way that most people wanted. Like the only bad reviews I've gotten about the film have been people that were mad that I didn't make the film the way they wanted to see it, which is a normal biopic with, interviews of JENS coaches and all this sort of thing. I made a movie that was about a guy in a space and time that could relate, that if you're, a human being, you can relate to him. It doesn't matter that he does this thing. It's that he is a genuine human being going through genuine struggles, coming from a genuinely hard place that a lot of people recognize directly from their own experience. But then even if you don't share that experience, you can empathize with him and or sympathize with his plight. And I that's been the biggest thing. Is I feel like this film, if I had made the other film, I would have had a really short life. I would have had a lot of people that were into MMA watch it, be done with it, and that was it. It wouldn't have had any crossover audience into people that are like one of my friends is a dancer, loves the movie. She just loves it, but would really not be into mixed martial arts. It's thinking about those things too. It's about the longevity of it. But a lot of that comes too. It's so hard because you can't. That's why it was interesting because I know, like, I think that your show took the uptick sort of like 2010ish, 2011. And there's a lot of conversation about what you have to do and what you need to do and what and the problem is that a lot of these things now, like the dust is starting to settle, and it really all comes back to, like I always talk about, it's just the fundamentals. Like fundamentally do good work, and work to get it out there. Like you can't just make good work and then go, oh, it's done, and not do anything with it. You have to really work at it to get it out there and to have your voice heard, and hopefully not in an annoying way. Nobody likes that. But to just, like I said, to be prolific and have a strong craft and continue to work and continue to add something to the community as a whole. But in terms of your work and how it will be received, you have really little control over that, no matter what you do. It's just you have to make the work to the best of your ability, from your own perspective and experience, and in a lot of ways hope for the best. Can you plan and strategize certain things? Yes. Will it always go the way you think you hope it will? No, generally it won't. But each, it's all a step. I mean, 2 years ago I didn't have a film out that people could go that's in the top selling documentaries on iTunes. Now sports documentaries at this point. I mean, it stayed in the top 200 documentaries, period, on iTunes for 7 months.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah.
again, it's like it doesn't really mean much, though it had to be generating revenue, which is helpful. But I mean, people, and I saw this a couple of years ago. I'm like, well, it doesn't really do me a whole lot of good to have a movie in two movie theaters like that. Like people are watching movies there, not these movies, not anything I'm making. People are going to go online. If you want to be a legitimate filmmaker, people always ask that question. Oh, where can I see your movie? You say, well, you can see it in Topeka, or you can say, oh, well, just go on Netflix. It's there. Oh, well, you're a filmmaker now. All of a sudden, and it's just being where the action's at. Really, is how I see it. And who knows what next platforms are going to come up. But I like things being accessible, and I also pay attention to what I do. I talk to filmmakers, and you with like sort of these grand ideas about how their work should be presented and whatnot. I'm like, okay, how do you watch movies? Well, I go on Netflix, or I rent on iTunes or something. Okay, yeah, and so does everybody else. So why don't you look at the where the action's at, where people are actually watching, and go there. And by going there and then having it being available on those platforms, then eventually I think you can draw back to your own site, your own sort of ecosystem and space. But that just takes time before people are seeking you out.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, I feel like you're rambling on.
No, you're giving us great information.
Yeah.
I really just have two more things I'd like to cover, and then we'll let you get back to doing everything you do, Gregory. And then, in addition to anything Karen may have for you, I'm just curious, with Person of Interest and with, JENS, both out there, driven, just highlights, things that, the things that you've learned from releasing both films, having them out there, and maybe some takeaways in terms of how that, what direction that's pointing you, as you maybe start to think of what you're going to do with Bloodsworth.
Well, the first thing I would say is that I think people worrying about torrenting is stupid. I find the whole argument, the argument put forth by Hollywood, I mean, granted, more people are downloading their stuff, but I honestly would be hard-pressed to think it's hurting revenue. If you're an independent and you're quoting me numbers of what you could have made, you're completely insane. The other part of it is that the reason I did it with Person of Interest is I love Jamie King. I think that he's a smart guy. I like the direction they're going. I love his ideals of like eliminating friction. But for me, I don't tort because there's so much friction. Like I don't know what to do. It seems like such a pain in the ass.
Totally.
And I know that the majority of people that are just like me, it's such a pain in the ass. Like, can I find it on Netflix or iTunes or Hulu or some easily accessible thing where I know, like, I pay $8 and I get to see stuff? That's what people want. They don't want to be, there are younger people that are willing to spend that maybe have a little more discretionary time to go and do this thing. But, like, I find it, and I'm just not interested in it because it's too hard. And so I think that we got to stop worrying about that. Can it eventually be a tool? Possibly. I think that I've been watching what has been successful on Vodo, and especially their series Pioneer One, the genre stuff. I'm actually developing. I just got a grant to do a project that I'm developing now, but we'll shoot right next year. It's a web serial basically, not like a 10-minute funny thing, but like I'm making it so it's like actual episode, like 24-minute episodes, and but totally to release online and totally for free, and to do something that is hopefully I think geared towards the web audience, but just for 21st century thinking. So that bit about torrents. In terms of Bloodsworth, there's with Driven, I was very bent on like the only distribution I'm really interested in is video on demand, because I feel like that's where people are watching movies. I feel like if I can get it out on these platforms, it'll sort of help provide a little bit of legitimacy, not only for the film, but for myself. And that was my goal. With Bloodsworth, it's kind of actually even going a little bit more towards the traditional route, not necessarily a theatrical release, but I would like to see it be a festival film. I would like to see it, if at all possible, and I doubt that it probably is, on the small budget that I have available to me, but you never know. I might be able to pull something out of the hat to be an award-winning film that people like seek out. I definitely am interested in VOD for it, but I'm also interested in partnering with organizations like PBS and that sort of group. And again, like opening a lot of different doors that I don't currently have access to directly. I'm starting to gain access again. I mean, with Bloodsworth, there's actually an interesting story. I have people sort of mentoring me through PBS, and only because I had it was an 18-minute clip of Kirk telling his story, and there's not much to it. It's black and white. He has a speech that he gives. He's a public speaker, and he tells a story, and it's very compelling. So I filmed him doing that. I cut it together. I put it on YouTube, and then I got a call from these people producing a series for PBS. And like, we want you to do a short film for this series on PBS, and we want you to do a thing about Kirk. Unfortunately, because of the PBS scheduling and budgeting, I don't know that the series is going forward. But again, it's one of those things where it's not a direct line, and all of a sudden, all these new doors open up that you don't know exist. Only because I wasn't cagey about the work. I just put it out. This is what I'm working on. This is the guy telling the story. This is why I think it's compelling. Anyway, I'm giving a long rambling answer to I learned a lot of things, definitely, about, I think where the best place is in terms of VOD, how to maybe couple these things together. I tried to do a tour with Driven that was sort of semi-successful. I want to do that a lot more successfully with Bloodsworth. And I'm working early to partner with organizations like the Innocence Project and the ACLU, so that the film can be, a tool that's actionable for them that they can then use for their own purposes. The biggest thing I think I've learned in all of these is to not be cagey with the work. It's you want to own it, and you want to figure out how best to make revenue off of it, because it really is, for me, all about sustainability. This is all this, plus the other sort of gigs that I do. That's all I do. I don't have a job. So sustainability is a huge key factor for me. And like anyone else, I have a child, I have a home, I want to, grow and, eventually be able to perhaps retire, or at least, feel like I could. But I think that if you're continually cagey about the work, I mean, honestly, this day and age, it feels like if you're being cagey about the work, it's probably not very good. If you're willing to get out there and just hustle with it and show it, and get in front of people with it and not be weird about how people watch it, because there's so many different viewing experiences. There's so many different ways in which people connect with and maybe some person, I know people who torrented Driven, I knew in the early days, actually, I had some people on some private MMA torrent sites. They had it, and I just emailed them and I said, hey, would you, I see up my movie, JENS and I own this, and we're, this, I explained sort of the scenario, like there's no company behind this except us, and asked if they put a description where people could buy the movie, and that actually, I think, generated some sales. And I just think it's about being open and willing to sort of accept those incoming connections as best you can. You can't always, work with everyone and the way that they're sort of coming at you, or respond to everyone. But I think if you can be open, you do yourself more service than damage. And I know a lot of people would argue that with me, but my experience has been that it's not, like, even with it being torrented. I think the only reason now it's, and I've been noticing some torrents going on overseas, and it's like it's just because the international release, it's like it's not readily available. Like, I get it, so.
Well, two-part question here. With Bloodsworth, do you plan to make DVDs for it?
I am looking. It's funny. I'm now wondering. Yes, DVDs. I think DVDs. Yes, I am actually, because I think DVDs, especially with the stuff I'm going to be doing with, or hope to be doing, no deals have been sealed, but I hope to be doing with some of these large organizations. I'm pretty sure that DVD will be sort of the easiest thing for them to do. But then I'm looking, because Hunter Weeks has done all these awesome Blu-rays, and I've been sort of envious of that. They're just so damn expensive. But I think with Bloodsworth there might be a little bit more demand for that. I mean, there is for Driven, but it's such a huge expense at this point that it's not really plausible. But I'm hoping to have, within the budget for Bloodsworth, to raise money for both. Yeah.
Which reminds me, Hunter Weeks' 10 miles per hour, he put that on YouTube, didn't he? Out there.
Yeah.
And my other question was just to further explain your definition of cagey. I'm wondering if some people are doing things they don't realize are holding themselves back and, quote, being cagey.
Well, like, I think, like the dynamo player. Like, I think it's a cool idea, but I think it's kind of bullshit to, like, show 8 minutes of a movie and then say, okay, pay me to see the rest.
Really,
people don't do that. And I go, oh, I mean, and there are some, granted, I'm sure, really low-budget independent films that are that good in the first 8 minutes that you will definitely pay to watch the rest of it. Most of them, I think people go, oh, I got to pay to watch the rest of this? No. But I think just I guess my greater definition of being cagey with the work is that, I find there's a lot of people that, filmmakers that, they're so afraid people are going to steal from them, whether it be the script or footage or, somebody's going to torrent the movie. I mean, I've seen people go, like, because that if you have a movie on Internet Movie Database, if you have your listing, there's some, pre-torrent site that's going to be cataloging your title, and they're going to say, this movie is available, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're not really there. And I've had people say, oh, how did they get my movie? Well, it's on your computer and your hard drive only, so I don't think they really have the movie. And also the people who are like, I've read an article, I mean, this was a year and a half ago or something, but in the LA Times, some guy explaining how his movie was torrented this many times and he lost $150,000 in revenue. And I thought, no, you didn't. I mean, because there's not easily equatable information. One, you don't know the exact numbers of the torrents. Two, I mean, at least a whole other scenario, like, it's 2012, and unless you have distribution in place, you have some sort of high-end backing and really great name talent and some foreign pre-sales if you can get them, there's no reason in the world you should be making a movie, a feature independent film for, over probably $100,000, but much less $250,000 or $500,000. You're kind of an idiot. Because it's going to be really damn hard to make that back. I know people in my own backyard, talented people, really talented, more talented than I would say. Great film, can't sell it. Can't, it's going to be very difficult to ever make the money back. And I think that that's a problem. And I think that if you're cagey about the work, like cagey about releasing anything, cagey about releasing clips, cagey about, just being so protective. Overly protective maybe is the better word. Like, you can't be so, you want to be protective of your rights, for sure. And if you sign contracts with people, you want to make sure that you can, like, that if I had signed that contract and I hadn't received a check from Gravitas yet, there would be legal action, there would be problems. I have signed some rights away, and I want, but in terms of getting the work out, in terms of where most of us are coming from in this day and age, and, and the fact of the matter that no matter how much Hollywood tries to litigate some of these things, technology always wins. Changing, progress, you can't stop. I mean, it's like all the political things that we're trying to subvert in this country, all of the things that we're trying to subvert technology-wise and in terms of piracy, there's piracy, which is if somebody went and took my DVD of Driven, replicated it themselves and sold it from their own website, they have just stole my property and they're selling it in, it's an illegal act. If somebody bought my DVD and then loved it so much that they wanted to share it with the world, they've shared some digital files. And I see a very important distinction in that. I see one that's direct malice. I see one that is, I don't know what I describe, but I don't think it's malice. And I think that there's a problem in those things. And I think that too many folks come down on the side of like it's malice and everyone's out to get them. And I think, well, probably not. Because, I mean, if you're really realistic about your situation, as I hope I am, like, even after doing these things, most people don't know or care who I am. I am just some guy that lives in Idaho that makes films that most people don't know. They don't know my name, they don't know my work, they don't know anything about me. So I'm not going to be cagey about what I do because I'd like more people to know about my work and what I do. You know, so I don't know if that helps.
Yeah,
so.
It does. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I just want to come full circle here, Gregory. You know, we don't want to continue to take up too much time. We want to wrap it up here. But at the same time, any final thoughts, final words on what we're doing with our Goodbye Promise release? You know, we're turning to you as a little bit of a mentor here. Any suggestions, any advice? You know, just you know, obviously this is the first day. We only, I mean, we have no idea where this is going. We have like 10 people that have supported this so far. So, but just give us your thoughts.
Well, like I said, again, I think it's a really cool and interesting idea. I've seen somebody use a crowdfunding site for this purpose before. I think your price point is perfect. You know, it's not, you know, I know that there's been arguments against like, well, you can't price it too low because the people find it has no value. Well, reality check, most people think that independent films have no value. Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest. Unless you give them a reason for it to have value. And I feel like, you know, I watched your video on there, and then I paid my $2 so I could watch the movie. But I think that, you know, all the things that you say in there, all the things that you're talking about, and also, frankly, some of the reviews and some of the reactions that you already got from the film, you know, I think they speak volumes already, you know. And in the end, I mean, the only thing that I can offer is just, or I don't know, I can offer anything, but I would just say to you personally is that, you know, you made something, you've seen it all the way through, and now you've put it out and you're doing it in an interesting way. Is it going to be the end all? Probably not. You know, it's like the next day you're going to have to get up and do the same stuff you've been doing for the last decade. And I know that you both are used to that and you do it well. And I think it's just knowing that stuff, it's almost freeing a little bit to know that stuff doesn't really end. Even if you get those nice little bumps, which I hope that we all do. I hope that we get those nice little bumps, like our career get the little bump here and there, our pocketbooks get a little bump here and there. But I tell you that just by simply doing it, by doing all the things you've done over the last couple of years with the show, and now I've seen the film through, and now putting it out in a way that, you know, seems, you know, makes total sense to me. And I think is, you know, a fresh twist on, you know, what's been going on with with distribution. You know, you've set yourself up for something. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. But, you know, you've done so much work that's leading you somewhere. And if you can feel good and happy about, I mean, the biggest thing is like, if you can look down the line and go, we made a great film and we feel really proud of how we put it out. And, you know, maybe we made $1,500 or maybe we made $15,000 or $150,000. You know, it's taken us somewhere. Like we've moved the needle a little bit, and it's all about that. And sometimes you move it a lot, and sometimes it just stays there for a while. And it's all about.
Yeah,
you know, it's just always moving forward.
I like that.
You know, well, and that's the thing. It's like everybody's like, oh, let me find the new amazing knowledge that will help me just. And there is none. You have to work, and you have to work really hard. And when, unfortunately, you know, for people like us, I'm assuming that you're not independently wealthy either. You know, you just have to sort of slog along and give fully into, you know, like I have friends that work in Hollywood. There was a couple of years I'm like a little envious of that, and then I just realized, you know, what do I want to? I like controlling everything that I do. I like being able to say, this is what I'm going to do this project. You know, I mean, I'm doing Bloodsworth this next. You know, I'm doing a bunch of shooting on this next month on Bloodsworth, and then I'm taking 3 days. I'm going to Pendleton, Oregon, which is about 3.5 hours away from me because it's an amazing 100-plus-year-old rodeo Western event that I love. I'm doing a little short documentary on that. You know, they're putting me up, and I'm just doing, you know, because I wanted to do a film about that. You know, I just get to pick up and go and do. Do I want that life, or do I want this other life that's a little more, you know, it's funny because, like, I know that most people in the independent film world are making audition tapes for the big show. And there's something cool about the big show. But I look at the big show and I love the big show. I love the movie. You know, I'm like, I've seen the Avengers. I've seen every, you know, ridiculously huge blockbuster thing because they're fun. Do I make that kind of movie? I haven't yet, and I don't know if it's really in my realm of style and thinking to do so. Like, it's not my thing. I don't know. You know, but am I happy with where I'm at? Yeah. Could I do it better and make more money? Sure. But that's, you know, moving the needle a little bit. So.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, no, you're awesome, Gregory.
Yeah,
you
thank
know, we encourage everyone who's watched or listened to this far. Please take time out, check out Person of Interest. You know, certainly check out JENS PULVER Driven. You know, it pulls on the heartstrings. It's raw, real life.
Yeah.
It's just great storytelling.
Yeah, and even if you're not an MMA fan, I think what you said, you'll appreciate the human interest part of it as well, and his rise and the different dips that he took. And we'll also provide links to those films below the video.
Yeah, you know, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Gregory.
thank you, Gregory.
You know, and
This has been really great.
just keep on, man. It's always great. Every now and then we can kind of just look out and to see what's going on over there in Idaho. So you see what Gregory Bayne's up to,
Yeah.
and just sort of, you know, feed off the energy that you put into what you do.
Yeah.
Well, I do the same with you guys. So thanks very much.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And also slightly envious. We'd love to be able to live somewhere maybe a little more remote where you are, and just like you said, just have sort of more control over time, because really, I think that's a lot of times what it comes down to. It's just that control of time and your actions during that time.
Yeah, it's true. Helps.
Yeah.